The day I told my husband and son I lost my job, my husband packed his bags and left saying, "You're nothing without that job." My son, with tears in his eyes, shouted, "You're useless now, Mom." But what they didn't know was that 72 hours later, I received an unexpected $1.3 million. 3 days later, they were bombarding me with desperate calls, messages, begging for a second chance. "You're nothing without that job." Julian spat the words at me while dragging his suitcase across our hardwood floor. The termination letter trembled in my hand as I watched 17 years of marriage heading for our front door. Upstairs, Daniel slammed drawers, hastily packing his belongings. "You're useless now, Mom," he shouted down the stairs, his voice breaking. Just 72 hours after losing my job, I was losing my family too. The speed of their betrayal left me breathless. But they didn't know what was coming. 3 weeks earlier, my life had followed its predictable rhythm. The alarm buzzed at 4:30 a.m., same as it had for the past 17 years. I silenced it quickly so Julian could sleep another 3 hours before his office job. My fingers automatically reached for the gold locket on my nightstand, a gift from Vanessa, my best friend since high school, and I clasped it around my neck before slipping out of bed. The routine was second nature. Shower, coffee, quick breakfast, out the door by 5:15 to reach Giovanni's by 5:45, giving me 15 minutes to review the previous day's receipts before the kitchen staff arrived. Working as senior manager at one of Boston's most prestigious Italian restaurants had defined my adult life. I'd started as a hostess at 22, climbing steadily to become Giovanni's right hand by 30. When Giovanni himself stepped back 5 years ago, I essentially ran the place, though his name remained above the door and on the paychecks. What nobody knew, not Julian, not Daniel, not even Giovanni, was my private ritual that began my very first day. After each shift, I tucked away a small portion of my tips and salary into a separate account. Initially just $25 a week, then $50, eventually growing to $200 as my position improved. Sometimes it meant telling Julian my bonus was smaller than it actually was, or that specialty ingredients cost more than their true price when I did the shopping. The guilt gnawed at me occasionally, but something deep inside kept pushing me to build this secret safety net. "Mom, can I get the new PlayStation?" Daniel had asked just last month, his teenage face full of expectation. "Dad said if you agreed we could pick it up this weekend." I'd smiled and nodded, knowing the $500 would barely dent our regular account. My family never questioned our comfortable lifestyle, never wondered how my restaurant salary stretched so far. Julian's job as a mid-level insurance adjuster brought in steady money, but my income carried the weight of our mortgage, Daniel's private school tuition, and our annual vacations to Florida. The day everything collapsed started normally. I unlocked Giovanni's side entrance, flipped on the lights, and settled at my small office desk with the previous evening's numbers. When Giovanni called requesting an early morning meeting with all management staff, a faint alarm bell rang in my head. He rarely came in before noon anymore. At 9:30, Giovanni stood before us, his usually animated hands unnaturally still. "The investors have pulled out," he announced, voice flat. "After 32 years, we're closing. Permanently. This Friday will be our last service." My colleagues gasped and protested, but I sat silent, fingers gripping the edge of my chair as the room tilted. 17 years of my life, gone in a 15-minute meeting. We received generous severance packages, 3-month salary, but that meant nothing against the void suddenly opening before me. That night, Julian hugged me tightly as I broke the news. "You'll find something even better," he promised, his confidence seemingly genuine. Daniel brought me hot chocolate and shared stories about famous comebacks, his teenage awkwardness momentarily set aside in this family crisis. Their support lasted exactly 18 days. The first week, Julian suggested I take time to process, before jumping into job hunting. The second week, he began leaving employment listings on the kitchen counter. By the third week, his questions had an edge. "Did you call that place in Cambridge? Didn't your old colleague mention an opening downtown?" The truth was, I had applied to 17 positions, each met with either silence or polite rejection emails citing my overqualification or the unprecedented number of applicants. At 45, I discovered that prospective employers saw my experience as a liability rather than an asset. They wanted younger, cheaper talent without my salary expectations. "Stella, we need to talk about expenses," Julian said one evening, spreading credit card statements across our dining table. Your severance won't last forever. I know that, I snapped, the constant pressure cracking my usually calm demeanor. I've been looking everywhere. Maybe it's time to consider something different, he suggested, not meeting my eyes. Retail perhaps? Or administrative work. The implications stung worse than the suggestion itself. After running $1 million restaurant, Julian thought I should stock shelves or answer phones. That night, I caught him studying our mortgage statement, circling numbers with a red pen. Daniel's attitude transformed just as dramatically. The boy who'd never worried about money suddenly questioned every purchase I made. Do we need name-brand cereal? He asked in the grocery store. Later, I overheard him on the phone with a friend. Can't go to the concert. Mom's unemployment situation, you know. The final blow came when the hot water heater broke, flooding our basement with 2 inches of water. The $1,800 repair bill sent Julian into a cold fury. This is unsustainable, he said, pacing our bedroom. You need to figure something out. I'm trying, I whispered, fighting tears. Trying isn't cutting it, he replied, pulling our suitcase from the closet. I can't live like this, wondering if we'll make next month's mortgage. I watched in disbelief as he began packing, methodically folding shirts and slacks. When I reached for his arm, he jerked away. You're nothing without that job, he hissed, words precisely calculated to wound. The woman I married provided, contributed, succeeded. I don't know who you are now. From upstairs, Daniel appeared in the doorway, eyes wide with fear that quickly hardened into something else as he assessed the situation. His loyalty required no deliberation. I'm going with Dad, he announced, chin raised in defiance. Before turning away, he delivered the final knife twist. You're useless now, Mom. As they loaded the car, neither looked back at the woman who had cooked their meals, washed their clothes, and funded their comfortable lives for nearly 2 decades. The garage door hummed closed, leaving me alone in a house suddenly too large, too quiet, and too filled with memories of people who loved me conditionally. What they didn't know, what nobody knew, was that in 72 hours, everything would change again. But they didn't know what was coming. 3 days before they abandoned me, the atmosphere in our home had become unbearable. Julian no longer bothered masking his disappointment. That Thursday morning, I found him at the kitchen table, coffee untouched, scrolling through rental listings on his tablet. What are you doing? I asked, pouring myself a cup. Just looking at options. He didn't meet my eyes. We might need to downsize soon. The casual way he said it, as if discussing a weekend weather forecast rather than uprooting our lives, made my stomach clench. He continued scrolling, adding, My cousin Mark has a 2-bedroom apartment in his building. It's not great, but the rent's manageable on just my salary. I'll find something, I promised for what felt like the 100th time. Julian finally looked up, his expression hardening. It's been 3 weeks, Stella. We can't keep pretending this is temporary. That evening, I'd prepared Julian's favorite meal, herb-crusted salmon with roasted potatoes. A peace offering. An expensive one considering our situation, but I needed to ease the tension. When he walked in and saw the dining table set with our good plates, he paused. What's the occasion? He asked, loosening his tie. No occasion. Just thought we could use a nice dinner. He examined the spread, then frowned. How much did this cost? The question sliced through my attempt at normalcy. It's just dinner, Julian. Dinner we can't afford, he snapped, throwing his keys onto the counter with a loud clatter. Salmon? While you're unemployed. This isn't the time for pretending everything's fine. Daniel trudged downstairs, drawn by the raised voices. At 16, he'd inherited Julian's lean build and my dark hair, but lately his face had hardened into an expression I didn't recognize. Are you guys fighting again? He asked, eyeing the untouched food. Your mother decided to splurge on dinner rather than save for next month's mortgage, Julian answered. Dad, come on, Daniel said, but his tone lacked conviction. He grabbed a plate, serving himself without sitting down. I've got homework anyway. After he left, I faced Julian across the table. You didn't have to do that in front of him. Do what? Tell the truth. He stabbed at the salmon. Someone needs to be realistic around here. The next day, just 24 hours before they'd leave, my cell phone rang during a job interview at a new fusion restaurant downtown. The manager's expression soured as I fumbled to silence it. By the time I stepped outside 40 minutes later, I had 3 missed calls from Daniel's school. My heart raced as I called back. Daniel had been in a fight. Nothing serious, the vice principal assured me, but he needed to be picked up. When I arrived, Daniel sat outside the office, ice pack pressed against his jaw, eyes fixed on the floor. What happened? I asked, signing him out. Nothing. In the car I tried again. This isn't like you, Daniel. Fighting. He stared out the window, jaw clenched beneath the ice pack. Finally, as we neared home, he muttered, Trevor asked if we were gonna be homeless since you got fired. The words struck like physical blows. Daniel, we're not going to be. Save it, he interrupted. Dad says we might have to move to an apartment. Everyone's going to know. That night, Julian came home late. I waited in the dark living room, unable to sleep, needing to talk about Daniel, about us, about our increasingly fractured family. When the front door finally opened at 11:20 p.m., I could smell beer on him from across the room. Where were you? I asked. Out with Mark. Discussing options. He dropped onto the couch beside me. I can't do this anymore, Stella. Do what? Pretend we're fine. Wait for the miracle job that isn't coming. He rubbed his face. You know what Mark said? He said I was an idiot for letting you handle our finances all these years. The accusation blindsided me. What's that supposed to mean? It means maybe we wouldn't be in this mess if I'd been paying attention to where the money went. His voice grew louder. 17 years at that restaurant, and what do we have to show for it? A mortgage we can barely afford and a kid who's getting into fights because his mother can't hold a job. Something snapped inside me. That's not fair, and you know it. Fair. Julian stood abruptly. You know what's not fair? Building a life with someone who collapses the minute things get difficult. I followed him upstairs, where he yanked our suitcase from the closet. What are you doing? What I should have done weeks ago. He began throwing clothes inside. I'm going to Mark's until I figure things out. You're leaving? Just like that. My voice sounded distant, as if belonging to someone else. Julian's packing grew more frantic. What exactly are you contributing right now, Stella? To this marriage? To this family? I grabbed his arm. 17 years. Doesn't that count for anything? That's when he said it, the words that would echo in my mind for days. You're nothing without that job. Daniel appeared in the doorway, awakened by our argument. His eyes darted between us, then fixed on the suitcase. Understanding dawned on his face. Dad. His voice sounded so young suddenly. Pack a bag, Julian told him. You're coming with me to Uncle Mark's. Daniel, I pleaded, reaching for my son. You don't have to go. His eyes, my eyes in shape and color, filled with tears. For a moment I thought he might stay. Then he whispered, You're useless now, Mom, and turned away. 40 minutes later they were gone. I stood in our driveway watching tail lights disappear down the street, the neighbor's porch light casting long shadows across our lawn. Mrs. Peterson peeked through her curtains, surely adding this scene to tomorrow's neighborhood gossip. Inside, the silence crushed me. I wandered from room to room, touching Julian's razor in the bathroom, Daniel's abandoned homework on his desk, the family photo from last Christmas that suddenly seemed like fiction. In the kitchen, our dirty dinner dishes still sat in the sink, Julian and Daniel's last meal in this house. I sank to the floor, back against the refrigerator, and finally let the tears come. They racked my body in waves, stealing my breath, turning my fingers numb. I cried for my lost job, my fractured family, the future that had evaporated in a single evening. When no more tears would come, I remained on the cold tile, watching dawn's gray light seep through the windows. As the first birds began to sing, an unexpected clarity washed over me. My husband and son hadn't left because I'd lost my job. They'd left because they'd never truly seen me. To them, I was merely a function. Provider, cook, stable presence. Without my paycheck, I held no value. 17 years I'd spent at Giovanni's, and 17 years I'd been saving, preparing for something I couldn't name. Now I knew what it was. Insurance against conditional love. Protection from fair weather family. I pulled myself up from the floor and went to find my private bank statements. It was time to make a call. I pulled myself up from the floor and went to find my private bank statements. It was time to make a call. At 7:30 a.m. I dialed Vanessa's number, knowing she'd be awake preparing for her early shift at the hospital. She answered on the second ring. Stella? Everything okay? My voice cracked as I tried to speak. Julian and Daniel left last night. What? The shock in her voice mirrored my own disbelief. I'm coming over. Give me 20 minutes. True to her word, Vanessa arrived exactly 19 minutes later, still wearing scrubs from her night shift, carrying a bag of fresh bagels and coffee. Her familiar perfume, something floral and clean, filled my kitchen as she wrapped me in a tight hug. Tell me everything, she said, pouring coffee into 2 mugs. I recounted the previous night's events, my voice steady until I reached Daniel's parting words. You're useless now, Mom. That's what my son said to me. Vanessa's face darkened. That doesn't sound like Daniel. It doesn't sound like Julian either, but here we are. I pushed my untouched coffee away. 17 years together, and he leaves the minute I can't pay the bills. Men, Vanessa muttered, squeezing my hand. So what's your plan? I hesitated, then reached for the folder I'd retrieved earlier. There's something I've never told anyone. Not even you. Sliding the bank statement across the table, I watched her face as she registered the numbers. Her eyes widened, darting between the paper and my face. Stella, she whispered, is this real? $1,322,000. I nodded, a strange calm settling over me now that my secret was finally shared. I've been saving since my first day at Giovanni's. Small amounts at first, then more as I earned promotions. All these years. Vanessa set down the statement. Why didn't you tell me? The question made me pause. Why hadn't I? I'm not sure. It started as a safety net, then became a habit. After a while, watching the numbers grow gave me control, I guess. Something that was just mine. Vanessa shook her head in amazement. And Julian had no idea? No one did. I opened the account with my maiden name at a different bank. I'd deposit cash whenever I could so it wouldn't show on our joint statements. Smart, Vanessa murmured. She took a sip of coffee, studying me. So what are you going to do with it now? The question hung between us. What was I going to do? For 17 years I'd focused on growing this nest egg, never planning how I'd actually use it. I don't know, I admitted. Part of me wants to call Julian and throw the numbers in his face. Tempting, Vanessa agreed with a small smile. But there's a better way to show him what he walked away from. Which is? Live your life. Happily. Starting with a vacation. She grabbed my phone and opened the browser. Where have you always wanted to go but couldn't because of work or family obligations? Vanessa, I can't just. Yes, you can. Her tone brooked no argument. You've been saving for almost 2 decades. If not now, when? He was right. What had I been saving for if not for a moment like this? Still, the thought of spending money I'd squirreled away for so long triggered an almost physical anxiety. I'd feel guilty spending it on something frivolous, I confessed. Vanessa's expression softened. Stella, taking care of yourself isn't frivolous. You've spent your whole life taking care of everyone else. This money represents 17 years of your hard work. You've earned this. For the first time since Julian and Daniel left, I felt a flicker of possibility. Maybe a week somewhere warm? Nothing extravagant. That's my girl, Vanessa said, already scrolling through vacation rentals. What about Florida? You always loved St. Petersburg. We spent the morning planning. Not an over-the-top luxury vacation, but something comfortable and restorative. A beachfront condo rental for 10 days. A rental car. Reservations at well-reviewed restaurants. By noon, everything was booked and the reality of what I was doing began to sink in. What if they call while I'm gone? I asked, anxiety creeping back. Then they call, Vanessa shrugged. Your phone works in Florida. But you don't owe them immediate availability, Stella. They walked out on you. After Vanessa left for her afternoon shift, I started packing, moving mechanically at first, then with growing enthusiasm. Swimsuits I hadn't worn in years. Sundresses. Sandals. Each item I placed in my suitcase felt like a small act of rebellion against the constraints I'd lived under. The house phone rang just as I was zipping my luggage. Julian's mother's number flashed on the caller ID. I let it go to voicemail, then listened as her concerned voice filled the kitchen. Stella, dear, Julian told me what happened. I'm so sorry about your job. I know things are difficult right now, but families should stick together during hard times. Please call me back so we can talk. The message confirmed what I'd suspected. Julian had spun the story to make himself the victim. I deleted the voicemail without returning the call. That night, I slept soundly for the first time since losing my job. In the morning, I called a taxi to take me to the airport, locking our house, my house, behind me. As the cab pulled away, I caught Mrs. Peterson watching from her window again. On impulse, I smiled and waved. Let her wonder. At the airport, waiting to board my flight to Tampa, I browsed a gift shop and impulsively purchased a leather-bound journal. On the first blank page I wrote, Day 1 of my new life. Below it I added, Things I learned. 1. Always have your own money. 2. People who only value you for what you provide aren't really valuing you at all. Boarding began, and as I settled into my window seat, a sense of lightness came over me. For the first time in 17 years, I had nowhere I needed to be, no one I needed to care for, no expectations to meet except my own. The plane taxied down the runway, gathering speed until the moment of liftoff, that magical instant when gravity loosens its hold. As we climbed into the clouds, I took a photo of my boarding pass and sunglasses arranged on the tray table, the wing of the plane visible through the window. I studied the image, then opened Instagram, an account I rarely used except to like Daniel's posts. My finger hovered over the share button as I composed a simple caption. Sometimes life takes unexpected turns. Florida, here I come. With a deep breath, I posted it. My first deliberate step into the light, my secret strength finally revealed, not with a confrontation but with a joyful declaration of independence. With a deep breath, I posted it. My first deliberate step into the light, my secret strength finally revealed, not with a confrontation but with a joyful declaration of independence. Florida embraced me with open arms. The beachfront condo exceeded my expectations. Spacious and airy with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the Gulf of Mexico. On my first morning, I woke to the sound of waves and watched the sunrise paint the sky in shades of pink and gold. After a simple breakfast on the balcony, I walked barefoot along the shore, letting the warm water lick at my ankles. Around noon my phone buzzed. A text from Daniel. Where are you? No. Hello. No, I'm sorry. Just demand disguised as concern. I slipped the phone back into my beach bag without responding. Let him wonder. That evening I dressed for dinner at an upscale seafood restaurant Vanessa had recommended. Before leaving I took a selfie in the condo's full-length mirror. Me in a flowing blue sundress I'd bought years ago but never worn, the sunset visible through the window behind me. I posted it with the caption, Dinner for one isn't so bad when the view is this beautiful. #new chapter #self-care. Within minutes, Julian viewed the story. He didn't message me but the notification of his name popping up sent a small thrill through me. Daniel commented a single question mark. I left it unanswered. The maitre d' seated me at a table overlooking the water. When he asked if I was waiting for someone, I smiled and said, Just me tonight. The words felt strange on my tongue, not sad as I might have expected but liberating. Over the next few days I established a routine. Morning walks on the beach, afternoons exploring local attractions, evenings trying new restaurants. Each day I posted one carefully composed photo. Me parasailing, sampling local cuisine, browsing in boutiques. Nothing flashy or boastful, just quiet evidence of a woman enjoying life. On day 5 Julian called. I watched his name flash on my screen while finishing a key lime pie at a waterfront cafe. When voicemail picked up he left a message. Stella, where are you? Your mother-in-law is worried sick. Daniel says you're in Florida? Call me back immediately. The commanding tone, so familiar after 17 years, sparked a flare of anger. I deleted the message without returning the call. That night I received a text from Daniel that made my heart clench. Mom, are you coming back? Dad burned dinner again. Those 9 words revealed so much. Not concern for my well-being but for the inconvenience my absence caused. Still, it was the first hint of vulnerability from my son since they'd left. I texted back, I'll be home in 5 days. There's frozen lasagna in the basement freezer. On day 7 I decided it was time. After breakfast, I logged into my banking app and took a screenshot of my account balance. $1,322,783.42. I opened our family WhatsApp group, dormant since they'd left, and began typing a message about the sunset cruise I'd booked. Midway through, I accidentally attached the screenshot, then quickly followed with, "Sorry. Wrong image. Meant to send vacation photos." I deleted the message immediately but knew they'd both already seen it. WhatsApp's double blue checks confirmed it. The response was immediate. First Julian, "Stella, call me. Now." Then Daniel, "Mom? What was that?" I silenced my phone and headed to my sunset cruise, a smile playing at my lips. By the time I returned to the condo 3 hours later, I had 17 missed calls and 34 text messages. Julian's tone had evolved from demanding to desperate. "Please call me back. We need to talk." Daniel's messages tugged harder at my heart. "Mom, I'm sorry for what I said. Please call me back." I sat on the balcony, listening to the waves crash against the shore as I considered my next move. Part of me, the part still raw from their rejection, wanted to ignore them completely, to let them stew in their regret. But another part recognized this as an opportunity for something new and better. Before responding, I called Vanessa. "They took the bait?" she asked, laughing when I described their reactions. "Hook, line, and sinker," I confirmed. "But now I'm not sure what to do. Part of me wants to forgive them, but you're afraid they only want you back because of the money," she finished. "Exactly. How do I know if their remorse is genuine?" Vanessa was quiet for a moment. "You can't know for certain. But you can set terms. Remember, you're negotiating from a position of power now." He was right. For the first time in our relationship, I held the cards. That night I texted them both, "I'll be home on Sunday. We can talk then." The remaining days of my vacation passed in a blur of sunshine and self-discovery. I drafted and redrafted what I would say to them, practicing in front of the bathroom mirror until the words felt right. Sunday arrived too quickly. As my plane touched down in Boston, anxiety knotted my stomach. What if this confrontation went poorly? What if they couldn't accept the new boundaries I needed to establish? Julian and Daniel were waiting at arrivals, both looking smaller somehow, diminished. Daniel rushed forward first, wrapping his arms around me in a fierce hug. "I'm so sorry, Mom," he whispered against my hair. Julian approached cautiously, uncertainty etched across his face. "Welcome home, Stella." The drive home was awkward, conversations stilted. I answered their tentative questions about my trip with brief responses, saving the real discussion for when we were home. In our living room, my living room, we sat in a triangle. Me in the armchair, them side by side on the couch. The power dynamic had shifted and we all felt it. "I think it's time we talked honestly," I began, my voice steadier than I expected. "Yes, I have money. Money I saved carefully over 17 years. Money neither of you knew about because you never asked about my finances beyond what I contributed to this household." Julian leaned forward. "Stella, if I'd known, you wouldn't have left?" I interrupted. "That's the problem, Julian. Your commitment to this family shouldn't depend on my bank balance." Daniel stared at his hands. "We were scared, Mom. Dad said we might lose the house." "I was scared too," I replied softly. "Scared of losing my identity after that restaurant closed. Scared of facing an uncertain future. But instead of supporting me through that fear, you both abandoned me when I needed you most." The silence that followed was heavy with recognition. Finally, Julian spoke, his voice rough with emotion. "You're right. We failed you. I failed you. And I'm more sorry than I can express." For the first time, I heard genuine remorse in his voice. Not manipulation, not calculation, but true regret. "If you're willing," I said carefully, "I think we can build something new from here. But it has to be different. Equal partnership. Mutual respect. And complete financial transparency, from all of us." We talked for hours, setting boundaries, making promises, finding our way toward forgiveness. It wouldn't be easy. Trust, once broken, doesn't mend overnight. But as the sun set on that Sunday evening, I felt something I hadn't expected to feel again so soon. Hope. Daniel made dinner, boxed macaroni and cheese but prepared with love. As we ate, he asked hesitantly, "So what are you going to do with the money, Mom?" I smiled, thinking of all the possibilities that lay before me. "I'm thinking of opening my own restaurant. Something small to start. And setting aside college funds for you. But mostly I'm going to make sure we never feel trapped again. Any of us." Julian reached across the table for my hand. I let him take it, his familiar touch both foreign and comforting. Whatever you decide, he said, we're with you. Really with you this time. I nodded, accepting his words while recognizing that only time would prove their worth. The road ahead wouldn't be smooth, but we were taking the first steps together. A family transformed by truth, rebuilding on more honest terms.